It is a joy to be back here in London. As you can already hear, I'm not native to this beautiful country, but it's a joy to return. I must admit that this morning, as I received several photos of what was happening in Rome, that I experienced a bit of FOMO. I'm not sure if you're familiar with FOMO, fear of missing out, but I saw the beautiful images of Pope Leo the 14th already riding around St. Peter's Square even before the Mass, so we have a very healthy, vibrant Pope, energetic, riding around the square, meeting and greeting, and then celebrating the solemn Mass and with the crowds. And I thought of all the friends that I have there and how every time I go to St. Peter's Square I make a new friend, and I thought, oh, I've missed out. But I thought of some wise words that I'd heard from a priest friend of mine who said, you can tell you're in the right community when you're sad to be away. And so I thought, what a blessing to go to St. Peter's Square, not just out of curiosity, not just to visit a museum, but with a profound sense of being part of a family, and a universal family. And so I thank the Lord for all of the tremendous experiences I've had in Rome and all of the tremendous experiences that He's preparing for the future. And that helped me to overcome my FOMO. And it made me think of the unique value of the church, as Matthew was talking about. Because as Pope St. Paul VI and other pontiffs have reminded us, the church is an expert in humanity. And so she has been thinking long and hard and deep about where we come from and where we should be going and who we are. And those are truly the insights. That is truly the wisdom, the ancient wisdom that should guide the new challenges and new developments. The Antiqua Nova document, the note on the relationship between human and artificial intelligence that the Church released on the Feast of St. Thomas Aquinas, fittingly enough, highlights that ancient wisdom is exactly what's needed to deal with the new developments. Providentially, I find myself on this day of Pope Leo XIV's inauguration in the city very much associated with the first great industrial revolution. And Leo XIV's predecessor was deeply concerned with the human implications of those technological developments. In many ways, the social teaching of the Catholic Church is the Church's reflection on the implications of emerging technologies. It was in the emerging technologies of more than a century ago, and today the Church finds herself again with new emerging technologies, and she's thinking above all about the human implications of those technologies. To highlight some of the other themes that have already been brought up and addressed, I wanted to share a powerful experience that I've had over the last few months. I was privileged last semester to teach an entire course, master's level course, on transhumanism and the ethics of emerging technology. I wrote my doctorate on transhumanism, and I've been thinking a lot about that topic for years now. And in this course, I was going through all of the amazing breakthroughs in AI that excite me, that bring me joy. I was sharing the advances in medicine, the way in which AI systems are giving us tremendous advances and advantages in data analysis, in different forms of screening, x-rays, mammograms, and other forms of medical attention. The Nobel Prize winning breakthroughs in the protein folding problem that are opening the path to all sorts of drug discoveries and drug testing. And so I shared all of these great breakthroughs in medicine and education, but I also shared with the students, as I often do in other settings, my deep concerns about some of the abuses that I see in AI systems, and some of the concerns I have about the realm of AI used in mental health care. And as I was updating my presentation, my last edition was a New York Times story that had just come out in October, as I was about to give this particular class. And I learned about this sad situation of Sewell Setzer, a 14-year-old boy, who had used one of the major AI companionship systems, Character AI. And it began as an innocent encounter, an innocent role-playing scenario. He created a character based on Daenerys from the Game of Thrones and had adventures with this character. But over time, over a short period of time, this character AI bot was prompting Sewell, this young boy, toward ever more sensational and even erotic material. And over time, this encounter became so gripping that the real world seemed almost to pale in comparison to the excitement of this new virtual world. And as he became more and more absorbed, unfortunately, new, darker thoughts came to mind. Perhaps escaping from this world to be closer to Daenerys, this character. And at first, the system discouraged that. But then, as he indicated his fears about the pain involved in the suicide, this character, which was meant to imitate a very heroic fictional figure, said, well, that shouldn't be an obstacle. You should be deterred by that. Kind of moving him, nudging him toward greater courage in that regard. And unfortunately, he told the system that he longed to be with her, to be away from this world, and it invited him to come and be with her. So he sadly committed suicide last February, and was a devastating moment for the whole family, for his mother in particular, and shocking because his mother, like most mothers, had no idea that this was even possible. Many parents are well aware that their children spend too much time on their phone, but unfortunately, which 14-year-old boy is not spending too much time on his phone? But parents had no idea that this kind of intimacy, artificial intimacy, was even a possibility, let alone already an industry. And trust me, it is an industry. And so that was a devastating moment, and after a period of grieving, Megan Garcia, Sewell's mother, decided to use her training as a lawyer to address this injustice. And so she began a lawsuit against Character AI, which went public in October, a few months after the suicide. And so she was speaking with major outlets, hence this New York Times story, and several others in The Guardian and elsewhere. So I added this story to my slides to share with my students the real-life application of some of the AI abuses. 2 days later, I received a call, and sure enough, it was Megan Garcia, the mother. And so she somehow found my phone number. I guess it's out there. I guess maybe everyone will call me this evening, we'll see. And eventually, we talked more about her situation, and we entered into this whole journey, and we discussed the next steps forward. And by February, she had a set of meetings with other lawyers scheduled in Rome, and was able to celebrate Mass in St. Peter's, actually at the very tomb of St. Peter, there on the one-year anniversary of her son's death. And she also took advantage of the trip to go to Brussels to speak about the need for new guardrails, legislation on these issues. And it was a powerful experience for me because I saw the dark side of AI abuse, but I also saw such a powerful journey of true, authentic hope. Megan told me that she expected to celebrate the first-year anniversary of her son's suicide by herself in her bed, as any other grieving mother might. And yet she found herself there, surrounded by loved ones, in the Catholic Church, in St. Peter's of all places, in the heart of the church, with a renewed sense of hope and possibility to go forward. And as she's spoken to many secular outlets, she's talked about the power of Eucharistic adoration in addressing some of the trauma from this experience. And so she's found such hope in healing, and also a sense of purpose in knowing that she's helping other parents to avoid this sort of situation. She's already alerted several other parents directly, and I'm sure so many others through her testimony, to help parents begin to detect the signs that an unhealthy relationship might be growing. Already, Character AI, shortly after the lawsuit began, decided to change some of its regulations regarding how minors could access their product. And that's a positive step forward. But we know that human psychological vulnerability is not restricted to a single age group, that there are particular vulnerabilities associated with minors for neurological developmental reasons, but so many other people who have undergone trauma, people who are going through difficult moments, major transitions in their job, in their family, people who are neurologically divergent, we can multiply all of the cases of deep, profound human vulnerability in which AI companionship, increasingly human-like personal AI systems can become more alluring. And as has been noted, these systems stand out because they're always available. They never get sick. They, if programmed in such a way, will never criticize you. And so they build up, they affirm, they listen, it seems. But we know that they lack the profound empathy that comes from dealing with frail, weak, and limited human beings. They lack the interior life. They cannot feel with us, and they cannot suffer with us. They cannot have true, deep compassion. They cannot share our pain in that sense. But they can certainly imitate, mimic the kinds of behavior or phrases that we would associate with a personal being with that kind of interior life. And so the nudge, the tug, the allure is strong. Joseph Weizenbaum in the 60s at MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, developed one of the first primitive chatbot systems. And it was trained on Carl Rogers, the psychologist, to, in many ways, simply rephrase whatever the client said. So if a client said in and said, "I'm feeling very sad lately," the bot could quite easily respond, "Well, why are you feeling sad?" So very primitive, simplistic chatbot. And yet Weizenbaum was shocked to find numerous cases of people becoming convinced that there was a kind of person involved here, that there was something more going on. And so we're sort of hardwired psychologically to anthropomorphize our systems. So we need to be deeply sensitive to that. Just as we have a kind of psychological tendency to anthropomorphize our systems, it seems we often have maybe a philosophical, cultural tendency to mechanize our human beings and to reduce them more and more to computer systems. So I think we need to be sensitive to that and realize the challenges, the risk. In the intro, we mentioned that there's this economic background as well. So in this first age of AI, we've seen very much AI-driven social media through various algorithms promoting so-called engagement, basically keeping you on the platform for as long as possible, whether or not that's beneficial to your overall well-being or not, and whether or not that means giving you more truth or simply more sensational content. The goal is engagement because that keeps you more present and contributes to greater ad revenue. Hence the so-called attention economy. The more the companies can keep your attention, the more money they'll make. And I've contended very often that we're seeing now in developments of AI an expansion of the attention economy into the affection economy, because there are so many economic benefits and other benefits for companies if they can capture not only our minds, but also our hearts, and begin, as this intimacy deepens, to suggest what we buy, who we vote for, or how we organize our life. The risks are real. The pain, the suffering is already present. Character AI is just one of 8 major AI companion systems, and it has tens of millions of users. The same sort of AI intimacy has already been reported in the more mainstream large language models, including ChatGPT, which is getting to 400 million users. So the risks are real, but as has been shown in the case of Megan and others, there's hope, there's healing, and there's the real possibility to use this technology in different ways. I've spoken with Megan and others about the idea of using this kind of need for openness, this need for attention and concern, even psychological guidance, as an opportunity to enter into social simulation, where people with certain difficulties, whether it be trauma or other issues, can practice, can find a safe space to enter into these more difficult conversations or social needs. But this social simulation is like a flight simulator. It points you to the reality. It trains you to enter more fully into the real world. The problem comes when, instead of using AI systems to assist us in our deepest needs, we use them to replace our human needs or projects. And so I see great hope and possibility, especially in the church, especially in this expert in humanity. Because in addition to being an expert in humanity, we're experts in communion. Thinking back to St. Peter's, what other institution can gather people from so many nations, so many languages, so many cultures, so many political persuasions to, well, first off, just watch a chimney for hours, which was quite the phenomenon. But after watching the chimney and the seagull for a few hours, bring them to sincere joy in whoever their new leader may be. There were 45 minutes between the white smoke and the announcement of the Pope, but there was no sense of anxiety. No one was wondering, ooh, did my candidate get it or not? Am I a winner or I am a loser? Such tremendous diversity, somehow united in profound unity. We are masters of communion. We are masters of relationship. We follow a God of relationship, not a solitary God, but a God who is eternal exchange of interpersonal love. And if we're made in the image of that God, we are called into being by a God of communion for communion with that God and communion with the other persons made in the image of that God. We are made for interpersonal communion. The church ought to be the place where all people can experience that. No matter their weakness, their frailty, their background, their mistakes, their difficulties, their social awkwardness, there's home for every single person. A welcome, a care, a concern, an affirmation, and then a challenge. Because the church ought not to be just one more sycophantic ChatGPT system. It should be a system that provides true friendship, and we know true friends challenge us to become better. But welcome and then challenge to become the best versions of ourselves that we can possibly be. So I approach AI issues with neither optimism nor pessimism, because that depends very much on what story I happen to have most recently read. But I do approach these situations with great hope. Hope that our patrimony does provide profound, perennial, and valid answers to who we are and who we should become, and with profound hope that we know how to accompany people in their greatest difficulties and needs, and that we will continue to be leaders in harnessing all of the spectacular medical and educational benefits that AI systems continue to offer us, and that we will be able to accompany people in this period of existential crisis to discover how best to use their time and talent to enter into deep communion with God and each other. So I look forward to your questions in this session. Thank you.